Thumbs. Like I said, folks, you did it. This is the last talk of the conference. One of the benefits of being last is that you get to take in all the information that's been provided and dropped at camp. One of the detriments of going last is understanding that everything you wanted to say has already been said. I did have a bunch of demos, but I may not even get to them during this talk. But I think the point, as you'll see, once I really become long-winded, is very simple in this talk. I'm not going to just jump right to it, but I do feel the urge. Experience Builder is coming, and we are told that it's going to eat not only the Drupal admin, but what is becoming apparent is that it's going to eat the developer experience as well. It is changing the rules on the ground on what kind of work that we actually build. That is high-level point. My name is Chris Weber. I work at Velir as a Drupal support manager. I'm known as Cosmic Dreams on the Drupal.org's. Been doing Drupal for as long as my kids are old, and I got a daughter going to college next year. So I love Drupal. I've been told to stop talking about Drupal at parties. Not everybody likes to talk about Drupal as much as I do. Just want to, before I really get into things, I just want to plug yet again, Midday Meetup. We meet during the workday, second Thursday of the month. Just get together, talk about some Drupal things. I need people to nerd out with and talk Drupal stuff. Please join us. Here's the link. Take the picture. Thumbs up. We've been talking about Drupal CMS. We've been talking about workspaces. We've been talking about Experience Builder. You could be the one that defines the agenda next week. Whatever you want to talk about. Usually, sometimes people come with their problem they're currently working on today, and we talk through it. It's really cool. Okay, show of hands. How many people work with Drupal? Yeah? Your Drupal website, does it have content types? If you don't have content types, you did it. I don't know how you did it. If you have a Drupal website that does not have content types, but because it has been the cornerstone of Drupal content construction since the beginning. Does your Drupal website have blocks? Yes? Nods are good. Nods are good. Does your Drupal site have paragraphs? Yes? A lot of sites have paragraphs. Are you using Layout Builder?
Yeah.
Some yes, some no. These are the foundations of everyday Drupal content construction. There are other solutions other than these four. Is anybody using something other than these four? Ideas I've heard, solutions I've seen in the past, storage entities. Everybody even heard of storage entities? Long ago there was one called Bricks. I like bringing that one up because I just think it's hilarious. When we're creating our Drupal sites, we are using one of these solutions, and with Experience Builder, one could ponder that they may all be impacted of some sort, and some of them may fall away. A lot of old hat Drupal folks have been pining for the day where we are no longer working with paragraphs for a very long time. I believe they still have value in a way. Okay. If you've never had a presentation from me before, you know I don't like to follow the script. So this is in general what the rest of the talk is going to be about. Just a lot of optimism from me, and at the end, we're going to open it up for a conversation piece where we can just together reach for the stars with unfounded optimism. So Drupal CMS is a thing that we all know about, and it is a greater opportunity than I feel that we've had in a decade to have a fresh start. We no longer have to be concerned about Drupal as a platform. We're starting to focus in on Drupal as a product. What can we organize and provide in Drupal to make it appeal to a market of Drupal consumers, instead of trying to be the everything tool that we focus Drupal core to be. And it has launched. It is out there, ready to be used, and now we have to make decisions. Drupal CMS 1.0, from a developer perspective, is all about recipes. It's all about finding collections of modules to provide solutions and have that be a part of what we are providing to the market of prospective new Drupal users. And we've, at this conference, have had a really great talk for that. I want to plug a talk that was here yesterday about how we can leverage the recipe system to install new content. The theme recipe that Bernardo was talking about. If after the camp and you're looking to get the most value out of the camp, it's good to find all the recorded videos of talks that you may not have attended. And this one would be a great one to just step into and see what this solution looks like and how much effort it'll take. And we've also had the talk about what are the future aspirations of Drupal CMS, given by Martin. By the way, these slides here, these talks do a much better job than I was going to about talking about these things. These are substitutes for long-winded sections. You're welcome. Drupal CMS 2.0 is going to be all about Experience Builder. Yes, iterations upon everything we've provided, but the Experience Builder is, when it lands, will vastly improve your ability to understand the content you are creating. And Brian, sitting there in the back, gave an excellent talk about what a good on-ramp for developers who are trying to create your very first pieces that work with Experience Builder, what that workflow looks like. And there are many things that I'm looking to aspire to. That'd be a great one to catch. And the other one to catch is Lori's big talk, Lori being one of the project leads of the Experience Builder. That doesn't look that way on mine.
It worked on local.
Yeah. So I should have wrote a test for that, I suppose. And what was clear from his talk is that Drupal CMS 2.0 is actually going to be a lot bigger than the ability to use Brian's work of creating components, little pieces of work that work with Experience Builder. It's also going to be an on-ramp for the most fantastical fever dream that my front-end developers have ever had when working with Drupal. May I please never touch a line of Twig. It sounds like with the combination of Theme Builder and this mystical CLI tool, which I still haven't seen, that could be a possibility. And I posted that to my company Slack and immediately got a few hits calling me a liar. But
means a lot.
Yeah.
Means a lot to you.
No, it does not, Brian. Okay. If you remember one thing from this talk, if you remember one thing from this talk, this is it. Our key strategy for getting our current websites working with Experience Builder is called Embrace and Extend, and it has negative connotations because we remember good old Microsoft using the same strategy when taking over entire ecosystems, but that doesn't mean the idea itself is bad. And what I specifically mean in this context is that, yes, you have content types, you have blocks, you have paragraphs, you have layouts, you have everything, but they all have templates. And as long as you are creating components, you can use those components in those templates. And so take an inventory of your existing site and everything that it is outputting to the screen. And your goal is to find the parts of your site that you use the most, that matter the most to you, and prioritize those bits into converting those two components. So this was the idea that I had coming into camp, thinking that this was our only strategy for being able to use everything that we have currently invested into our websites. If we ever want to have those bits go forward into the future, into our rocket ship launching off into space, that we would have to expend a developer effort to convert those pieces into components. But what I'm hearing at this camp is that perhaps we won't need to make that effort. Perhaps our blocks will automatically be used by Experience Builder. Perhaps even our paragraphs will automatically be used in Experience Builder. Maybe even the layouts. And the only thing that we'll have to make sure that we do is that if we want to improve upon those things in the future, if we do any new development in the future, we don't continue investing in these old strategies, those 4 pillars, that we start investing our time and our efforts into creating components. Yeah. So part of that is true. Today, content types and blocks, we can automatically use those in Experience Builder. The content types is just so fundamental that if Experience Builder couldn't display content types in Experience Builder, then it's not a thing. And they added the ability to have blocks be directly referenced. They started adding that work a couple of months ago, and apparently the final commit that solidifies that work landed this week. And in Lori's presentation yesterday, he explicitly mentioned the ability to use paragraphs and layouts in Experience Builder. Although I still don't know exactly what that means. Are layouts going to be directly used in Experience Builder, or are we going to try to find a way to convert a layout into Experience Builder? I'm hopeful to get his ear later today to find out. I just realized, has everyone seen Experience Builder? Raise your hand if you haven't. Would showing this demo be a benefit to you to see a composition page being comprised with Experience Builder? So this presentation actually is quite old. This is the same presentation I gave at Twin Cities Drupal Camp last year. This presentation, Kristen here, is creating the new.drupal.org page using Experience Builder. And over on the left-hand side, you're starting to see like a tree build up of all the different parts that comprise the home page. Just like in Figma, you're able to see what is the anatomy of my page. And that is super important whenever you're trying to understand the complexity of what you build. You try to focus in on just the bit. And whenever she clicks the plus sign, she gets a toolbox of different components to add. The way that this is improved today is that you actually get a nice little toolbox of components you can simply drag and drop in. Anybody work with Gutenberg in the room? A little bit? So apparently Gutenberg has this awesome feature where you can copy and paste the components that you've currently created. I didn't know about that until I came here at this camp, but they've added the ability to do that here in Experience Builder as well. You can create an entire layer of your marketing page, and you can just copy, paste it, and tweak it.
I've seen them do it using WordPress, and when I try and do a similar, let's copy and paste that into Gutenberg and Drupal, it didn't work. I was just interested to see if it worked. But that's been a while. It might have fixed it now.
Do people have experience with Figma in here? Have your hands on Figma? Yeah, the paradigm is pretty clear, isn't it? That's what they're shooting for. You got your little things you're modifying, your canvas, and then the properties on the right. The ability to configure the components that have been landed on the right. I can keep going, but that's probably enough, right? So for me, in my daily work, I understand I'm a bit of an odd duck. I do a lot of work with Acquia Site Studio. And one thing I learned here at the camp is that although Acquia is providing now two competing solutions, Acquia Site Studio is made by Acquia, and Acquia is also investing a lot in the team that is building Experience Builder. The vision for the future for Acquia Site Studio is that it's going to be Experience Builder Pro. And I'm still struggling to understand exactly what that means, because if you know anything about it, it's completely different. Experience Builder is built, that whole canvas we just saw, it's built in React. Acquia Site Studio is built in Angular. The canvas in Experience Builder doesn't look anything like this. It's got that left, middle, right. This is just building a fancy cake. Nice little column, it's an embedded widget. Acquia Site Studio has its own component system that does not use single directory components. And single directory components is at the heart of Experience Builder. There's a lot to figure out along the way, and it's difficult to get any vision on what progress is being made in that direction. And so, if it were true that Experience Builder Pro is going to be Site Studio, there's a lot that needs to be rewritten. That said, when I look and work with Acquia Site Studio, I see a lot of commonality. Every one of these components that you see on the page can be either created via configuration through the Acquia Site Studio component creation suite, or they can be created in code. Acquia Site Studio 1 year ago added the ability for those components to be created via code, and what do they need? They need a configuration file that defines the component. It needs CSS and JavaScript. It needs integration with the Acquia Site Studio backend, but what I've just described is exactly what a component is. If in the future Acquia Site Studio was using components, then that would be my happiest day. Well, it's speculation time. So later this year, it is said that we're going to have our hands on Experience Builder. And if we live in a world in which the work we could do is to create components, then we're going to start seeing modules that provide an entire suite of components that we can use. In the Experience Builder, they have this feature that they've added called extensions. And that is for the specific use case of somebody creating a suite of components that you want to try out. Maybe someone creates the Bootstrap extension, or someone creates the Radix extension of components. Maybe I will create the web components extension to fulfill the dream of work that we started a couple years ago, Brian, of creating a set of web components that handles the common things that we need to create. And once we see a number of those in the wild, we'll start seeing companies like Elevated Third, who create the existing Kinetics theme, and other agencies that create their standard solution that they get to reuse on other sites. And we'll be able to have a wealth of components that we can use to construct our pages. And once, because it's open source, we'll be able to compare and contrast the different solutions of components. But in addition to that, we'll see full-on themes shipping with their own components that we can leverage. Where's I going with that? I don't have my notes up.
You don't like to use notes.
I didn't quite hear that.
You don't like to use notes, you said. So,
Notes for people with weak memories.
Like me, apparently.
What were you saying?
What I'm most excited about, though, is what I consider to be the Holy Grail. I don't think I created a slide for this, but if we can have a way where we can create our components in a component library and have those be imported into Drupal, because one of the key problems when you're working with so many different components is keeping track of them all. How do I know what has been constructed? How do I know that I'm not duplicating efforts? You know, if you're working on a long-term project, you've got multiple stakeholders. Stakeholder 1 wants a card. Stakeholder 2 wants a card, but they're functionally the same, even though they look a little bit different. How do you make sure that you don't have a large amount of technical debt that you have to keep servicing over time? And so having a component library exposes those things. If you have tons of different implementations that are the same, you can see them in one place. And so for me, the Holy Grail is to have a storybook that defines all of your components and have those import into Drupal. What I'm eager to see more about is the CLI tool that Lori was talking about, especially if we have the ability to create our components in native JavaScript frameworks and just have those be used in Drupal. Then the fight that I've been fighting with my front-end developers for what I feel like the last 5 years, where they absolutely refuse to write any twig, and I have to take their work and I have to be the one to write the twig templates so that I can get some kind of integration. If we can create them in such a way that those components can land into Drupal and be reused in Drupal and also be reused in other projects. We do a lot of work in Sitecore. We do a lot of work in Optimizely. And so if we can have one set of components that have been created and that can be reused in multiple platforms, that would be ideal. I'm kind of at the end of my thoughts. But I also love to hear more from you. If you were to have your hands on Experience Builder, how would that change your work?
I'm super interested that they're picking Tailwind
Yes.
as the nice thing about
You've done a lot of work with Tailwind?
Yeah, I've done a bunch of Tailwind. The Laravel guys love Tailwind.
Okay.
If you go and install one of their starter kits, it's all in Tailwind. And the nice thing is there are lots of Tailwind component libraries out there that are open source or small amounts of money. You can I want that, show code, bang, bang, reload, it looks exactly the same.
Right.
And you're just like... So, yeah, it was interesting to see that's what they were going to use. So, because normally, you put stuff, any Drupal site beyond a simple one, you're immediately in a custom theme, right now.
On that thought, the theme builder that Lori showed, has everyone seen that? Is there a benefit to see that?
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that. Earlier on the week, I was talking to Christina, and I was like, I might go down the UI suites pattern, UI suites, UI patterns, UI USWDS, UI Tailwind, UI Bootstrap, and like that seems quite good. Then I can swap the front end depending on what my clients need, and I can plumb the things together. And then she was like, Experience Builder will make all of that pointless. And I was like, really? And then I saw Laurie's demo, and I was like, Experience Builder could make all of that pointless. So now I'm in two minds whether I should spend some time going down that rabbit hole or not.
That's right. That's why I was worried about demos. I busted Experience Builder yesterday.
So one of the components that just got put in this week is a picture of Mike. Is a thing with a picture of Mike Herschel's dog that's been committed.
Oh, the main thing to know about it from my perspective is that because Tailwind is available, because you can make other CSS libraries, you were talking about Pico and other, or maybe even your website's CSS library automatically being imported within the theme builder, you can very quickly reduce the scope of your problem to just the little widget you're making today. And left-hand side, you get a little bit of a code editor. Right-hand side, you get a preview. My dream layout. And so on the left-hand side, you can just write a little bit of code to get it to look the way you want it to look like without having to deal with data binding, without having to worry about, am I pulling data? Do I really need to debug this right now? You can just make it throw dummy data into where you want it to pull data from. You can start. This is all work that we would normally do with like an IDE, and then you could just do it right there on your Drupal site, so you know you're importing and you're gaining access to all the resources that your site has available, and then you can make it look. You start tweaking it until it looks right, and then you start being concerned with data binding. I am doing a terrible job of like making a very 1 minute review of your workflow, but part of that workflow can now be done within the Drupal site. Maybe even if we were to use the rest of the idea that Brian brought forth, you can start thinking of like, or you go to a code pen, you go to another website, you see a component implemented there, and you're like, I want that. And so you just go into the code inspector in your browser, and you copy and paste the entire markup of that element, you throw it into the theme builder, and then you start making it work with your classes, with your. If it was already using Tailwind, then you're good. But maybe you have to like tweak it a little bit in order to fight with your specific theme structures and the way that it layers, cascades all of its CSS, and you start working through all those problems right there.
As a back-end guy, with the pretty front-end pieces I can reuse, I'm all about that.
Yeah.
Right.
And that is just so wild compared to like the last decade of Drupal development that I've participated in. You got a question there?
I do, man. I'm going to ask you the same question I asked in the last room. Theirs was in relation to AI, but this is more in relation to the experience builder from our perspective as devs. We typically turn off the ability for production content editors, content versus config, right? We turn off their ability to modify config, or I've actually just heard about some workflows that deal with config differently. But what are your thoughts about how we as devs are going to interface with the content editors and their abilities now with Experience Builder to modify config?
Well, it is a cornerstone and fundamental truth that you don't want to do any tweaking of this caliber on a production site. If you find yourself in a position where you are in the act of like modifying the anatomy of a component or creating new components on a production site, 80% of the time you're doing it wrong. And the other 2% of the time, the client just needs it done absolutely freaking immediately, and it is the fastest path to getting it done. But you do add more work to yourself, needing to capture that work, making it part of the code repository. Otherwise, history will never remember your efforts. And so,
So it's still a very far cry from this whole shift in the Drupal community toward being for marketers is still a very far cry from the WordPress community of do everything in production. It's still
yeah.
correctly dealing with that.
I do believe it's a philosophical difference. I haven't been embedded in the WordPress community to know that perspective, but there is something to be said about treating production special and never as the immutable, as the etched in stone version of what you have. And that is, after all, the reason why so many Drupal hosting providers provide a development, a staging, and a production environment. It's the reason why a lot of those hosting providers make the directory that contains the configuration for your production site read-only. So even if you executed an action on your production site to export that configuration, that would not succeed. It doesn't have the ability to write that configuration. We've gone through a lot of fires, and that has been a hard and fast rule we have all agreed upon. So I don't think we're going back on that. But I do think that there is benefit within your local environment, a local copy of your site, or maybe even the dev environment version of the site, to take these actions.
So actually, in the last talk, somebody mentioned that their workflow is that in staging, it does give production people, content editors, or site builders, the ability in the staging environment to muck with config, and if they decide to go forward with that, there is a workflow that checks it into and commits it to code and code.
Right.
So that's pretty cool.
Capture those config changes so that history can remember them.
That's pretty cool.
I should say that in Site Studio, they do have the ability to create components, but it is nothing like the experience of using the text editor. They have a very complicated set of drop-downs and decisions to be made about that you're only, and you don't get to do anything you want. You have to make the specific set of choices they provide you. And so, again, another reason why I don't understand how Site Studio survives in competition to Experience Builder.
It's not going to, is it?
It's not going to.
They're going to take Experience Builder and extend it.
Brian?
That's what I was thinking, Lee, is that they're going to extend all the work they've done on Experience Builder. Now, if they do have a
Because Experience Builder has plugins, right?
It's kind of like asking a banana plantation how do they make really good oranges. It's like there's been so much time, so much effort going down this road, and they have to go. They have to change so much. They can keep their front end user experiences in some regard, but so much of it they would be better off dropping it all and start building on top of the Experience Builder effort, which can't really be done until it's done. Brian.
So the thing, and I think we have talked about this a little bit in Slack ages ago, but the thing that I am really fascinated about with Experience Builder is that the work that's being done for Experience Builder anyway, opens up the possibility for a theme engine other than Twig. And I think this is the first time in Drupal, since Drupal 8, that has been possible.
Right. And even in Drupal, pre-Drupal 8, we were talking, well, you have to write PHP in order to be your PHP, the PHP hypertext processor template, or PHP template, has to be, we have to mandate that you have to write your templates in this very specific way. You can't just use anything you want.
Yeah. But the thing that seems like is happening is that even though will technically be possible in Drupal, it's not going to be exposed in any way that front-end developers can use outside of Experience Builder, which is a little bit of a bummer from my perspective. But
Now, when you say that the components that you have in your Drupal site, if I'm rephrasing what you just said properly, that can't be used outside your Drupal site. But if you had a build step
yeah,
in which you built your components outside of Drupal, and then you shoved them into Drupal in some kind of way, then you would have a path to have a build step shove those components in something else.
yeah, it all has to go through Experience Builder, and I guess that maybe just gets back to what you were talking about in the beginning, that Experience Builder is on the path to eat everything.
Yeah. And from the beginning, it seemed like that was the intention. Block placement, content type display settings, regions, anything that deals with the composition of the page, layout builder, and to a certain extent, perhaps even blocks as a long-standing idea within what is the point of blocks when you have components? What is the difference between a block and a component? Right now, the answer is you place blocks in the block placement page. They have configuration. You know, how much of that needs to be preserved? So, Experience Builder is going to land. We're going to cope. We're going to change the way we do things. We're going to adapt. That's what we do. But 2 years down the line, what is life even? What is Drupal life gonna even be?
What is life?
And I suspect that if you start the process of learning how to create components today, that is an investment that is going to pay for the next 5 years, next 10 years, because we have the idea of components pretty well figured out right now. We've got schemas. It's going to evolve, yes, but I don't imagine it evolving much more exotically than what we have today. The knowledge you invest into building components today is absolutely going to pay off for the next 5 years. And that's really about as long as we have.
Yes, I mean,
I'll put a thought about it.
other frameworks and things are doing their version of single directory components as well, so everything is going in that direction.
Sure.
Even though some of them, I think Laravel has this single file component,
Okay.
which you're looking at HTML, JavaScript, and CSS
Sure.
all in the same file. And
There may be different ways of engaging, but getting your mind in the mode of I'm going to not deal with the complexity of everything that's being loaded on the page. I'm not going to not deal with conflicts of how this thing works with that thing. So I'm just going to narrowly focus on creating a single component and make sure that its anatomy is good and expect that I don't have to deal too much with
and it's
integration
isolated
benefits.
from everything else.
Right. Yeah. And if you were to focus in on writing your styles in such a way that you can make sure that your styles don't bleed out and they are isolated within the component, and if I could ever get you convinced that perhaps the best way to do that is to write web components, then I will achieve what I've been trying to accomplish since 2007. I literally gave my first talk about web components in 2007. But it wasn't a real thing then. It's a real thing now, though, Lee.
Well, I saw one of your browser tabs had a lit on it, so.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's about, for the very first time in the last, since Drupal 8, so like the last 8, nearly 10 years, this is the biggest thing that has landed in Drupal since then. And I would argue probably the biggest thing ever. Bigger than Entity API, bigger than the Migrate API. This is stuff that affects everyday Drupal development work. It's bigger than anything else that has ever happened to Drupal. That's my hot take. All right, any other questions before we run out of time? Okay, good. You did it. Great forward to Drupal camp.
Time for lunch.